This is part two of our series on common mistakes. And we're going to talk about eagerness to exchange pieces in this video. And usually it's like, players that play like this are usually just trying to get a draw out of the opening, or they have too much faith in their end game ability and just believe maybe they just want to quote unquote just make it out of the opening and try to get through the middle game, the end game, and then they can use their experience and try to uh, outplay their opponents. All right, and this is in contrast to players that you know are greedy. The players that are greedy, they're trying to just build up as much material lead as possible without taking into consideration, that that position might fall apart as a result, or they might fall behind in development and such. Players that like to exchange pieces, or uh, is kind of like an opposite mentality for a player that is trying to go for material gain. Okay, the person that's exchanging is usually trying to draw, where the person that's going after material is trying to win. All right. So let's look at a few examples. This first one is between Aloykin with the white pieces and Marshall from St. Petersburg, 1914. Hey, you have Petrov's d6, knight f3. Again, Marshall has the black pieces. Knight takes e4, d4, d5, bishop d3, bishop d6, c4. Check from Marshall, and knight bd2. And here's their first exchange. So knight takes d2, bishop takes d2, queen e7, queen e7, and it looks like Marshall is trying to head for a quick draw. Right, gets rid of the king, the queen's off the board. The king takes e2, bishop takes d2, king takes d2. Okay, bishop e6 from Marshall. Right, threatening his pawn. Now c takes, bishop takes. Now just take a moment and pause and look at the position. So yes, black has traded a lot of pieces, but he's just slightly behind in development. It's white to move, right? So white has access to these open files and can bring his rooks into play immediately. All right. The only um, potential weakness in the position is the isolated pawn. I say potential weakness because the pawn can also be potentially strong. Okay, depends on how um, the player playing against the isolated pawn can attack it. If the player can't attack it, this pawn can be extremely useful as it provides outposts um, for the knights especially, but also it can be other pieces. And being isolated, there's always going to be open files adjacent to it. All right. So after bishop takes d5, Marshall has a natural blockade, but it's white's move. So rook he1 check, king d8, and now bishop e4. So removing the blockade, bishop takes, rook takes, rook e8, right? So more exchanging. Rook a e1, rook takes, and now knight c6. Again, the material is greatly simplified here, but white has like this nagging advantage in the fact that his pieces are just a little bit better here. And it's difficult for black to complete his development. After all, um, black can move again. He would love to play his king up to d7 and just get this guy out. Okay, but again, it's white's move. Okay, And this shows the strength of Aloykin in that there is not that much material left, but just with this slight lead in development, he's just able to stay in control of the position. So understanding that black only needs a few moves to, you know, get his rook out, it's important that white maintains the initiative. Okay, rook g4 goes on attack. g6 for Marshall. Rook h4 attacking this pawn. Okay, and now king e7. You say, why does he give up the pawn? Well, if h5, then g4 is very powerful because the pawn cannot take, because then the rook would come back here. Okay, so for instance, g4, let's say king d7, and then just simply g takes h5. This is why he must give up that pawn. So king e7. And of course, he doesn't go to d7 here because this pawn, has to be protected after rook takes h7, so the king is over here. And also black wants to pile up on this d pawn. So rook takes h7, rook d8, rook h4 protecting the pawn, rook d5 blockade, and now rook e4 check, centralizing. King f8. If Marshall came to f6 with the king, then there's always the idea of the rook coming to the 8th rank. Not right away, but let's say king f6 here, right? Now the king protects along with the knight, and now this rook is free to go back there. So Marshall's like, I'm going back. There it is, king there, and now rook f5. Right, kind of tying this knight down here. Rook drops back. a6, a3, knight e7, and the idea is simply to blockade with the knight. Well-known strategy when it comes to playing against the isolated pawn. And now rook e5. Now Marshall realizes, hey, I can't exchange here. Why not? If rook takes, he just simply straightens out the white pawn structure, and you have this 4-2 majority on the king side. Okay, and now besides that, white is just simply up a pawn. So he plays rook to f6, king d3, b6. What does b6 do? It stops rook c5 attacking this pawn. Rook comes back, e2. Why you do? He could come here and do it. Knight d5, king e4, and now knight f4 is played, attacking this, and that. After say a move like rook e6, just simply knight e5. Okay, attacking this. Say after knight f6, and then king f3. Alright, so after 30, king e4, knight e4, with this double attack right here. There is the attack I was speaking of earlier. Knight takes there. And now there's a threat to win the piece by coming here and checking, driving the king away from the protection of this knight here. This is why rook takes c7 can't be played at this time. So Alakhan plays knight e5. Loikin, king e8. And now black can't protect the c pawn because knight d7 check is threatened. This is why he has to, at the knight e5, this is why he has to scoot over. Rook takes c7. Rook takes f2. Knight c4. And there it goes, d5, f6, knight b7. Alright. of course, preparing the advance of this pawn. Notice how the knight covers these squares and rook covers that square. Knight f4, b4, g5, d6, knight e6, king d5, check. And this is a strong move. If knight c7, it's going to be hard to stop this pawn. So king d5, if knight takes c7, then d takes, rook c2, and you just cut the rook off, and this pawn is going to queen. So this is why knight f4 check was played, and now king c6, rook takes, and now knight c5. Okay, and what this does, this move is great because it stops the enemy knight from keeping the d pawn from advancing. Right, this square is guarded. All right, and so Alakhan went on to win this game. Right, I'm not gonna go through the, it's like 20 more moves, but again, the point is that Marshall thought that he would have some kind of simple game, trading everything off, and gradually, even in simplistic state, Loikin's pieces were just slightly better, and he just had just a little bit of pressure on the position, and was able to drive home, bring home the bacon, so to speak. Let's see. Our next example comes from Game 6 from the Smyslov-Botvinnik World Championship match in 1957. Again, when showing these examples of like beginner errors, I want to show, some heavy hitters, so you don't think that, this is just something that is beneath, your study time. That is very important to drill the basics. It's like a basketball player or something, just shooting free throws, shooting hundreds of free throws. That's what this is like. You already know that you shouldn't, just mindlessly exchange pieces, but these are not only for beginning players, right, to let them know something they may not know, but for experienced players to bring it to their attention the importance of practicing and constantly staying sharp. So let's look at what happened between Smyslov and Botvinnik. So d4, Smyslov with the white pieces, of course, Botvinnik black. d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5, we have Grunfeld. Queen b3, classical variation. Queen takes c4, castle, e4, bishop g4, bishop e3, knight fd7, castle's queen side, knight c6, and we see tremendous pressure being put on the center, of course, by black, as he should. h3, bishop takes f3, g takes, knight b6, hitting the queen, queen c5, f5, right, wanting to break down white center, knight e2, queen d6 by Botvinnik, and now e5 here. Okay, now Botvinnik played the move queen takes c5 here. Now, of course, afterward, with analysis, it was generally accepted that queen d5 was a better move here. But Botvinnik played queen takes c5, exchanging queens. And after d takes c5, knight c4, f4, strengthening the center, knight takes c3, f takes, rook fd8, bishop g2. White at a clear positional advantage. One, let's look at the bishop, because I'm not going to just tell you there's an advantage. I'm going to tell you what the advantage is. Let's compare the two bishops. First, black's bishop is shut out of the game. Okay, and it's interesting too because a similar position happened with in the match with 1986 match between Karpov and Kasparov, if I remember correctly. I forgot which game it was, but this reminds me of that position where Kasparov's bishop was shut out of the game, and it was in the Grunfeld too. But anyway, not to go on a tangent. So let's compare the bishops. So first of all, black's bishop is um, suspicious, right? Dubious. White's bishop is active. All right. Next, white controls, a lot of squares in the center. Right. Look at those pawns. It's, right. A lot of central squares. Bishop is controlling. White has a lot of influence in the center. These squares. All right. So, and bishop g2. Let's leave it there. And so this gave white a tremendous positional advantage here. Now, if Botvinnik saw this position, then he probably wouldn't have played queen takes c5 here. Okay, but sometimes we get comfortable and figure, hey, if I just exchange the queens, I can draw this. And briefly, we'll just see what happened. So knight b4 was played, bishop takes b7, rook a b8, c6, king f7, knight d4, e6, knight b5, knight d5. Smyslov hit him with rook d5, e takes d5, knight c7, and we can see that white is just swarming all over black here. King d2, king e6, and knight c3, and black resigned at this point. That's how overwhelming the white position is. Just in a few moves after exchanging queens, you see that Smyslov was just able to run the position. Here's our next example between two unknown players with the white pieces, a player named Bachman versus pt2. And this is from 1887, but again, it's staying with our theme of, the eagerness to exchange pieces. So the game started off e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, castle, knight takes e4. Look at that, playing the Berlin back in 1887. Rook e1, knight d6, knight takes e5, and knight takes e5, so a little error right here already. Okay, black is determined just to exchange. Rook takes, bishop e7, knight c3. There's the next exchange, right? So he's continuing on with the same tactics. He probably should have just castled instead of playing knight takes. But he probably figures, hey, I'll snatch the bishop here. Why not? So knight d5. Excuse me, knight takes b5. And look at that. Now the trouble begins. Got this and that, right? On this bishop on e7. So now what? d6. And you might say, boo, what a blunder. But the problem is if he just tries to castle here, yeah, knight takes e7. Say king h8, queen h5. And the threat is just simply queen takes h7 here, because with the knight covering these two squares, after queen takes h7, king takes h7, then rook comes over here and mates. So he played d6, rook takes, king e7. Okay, so material is even, but white has tremendous initiative. Queen f3, threatening mate. Just real simple moves now. f6, d3, just bring the last piece out. c6, And now, this gives white a chance for brilliancy. And this is the type of moves that make it in the textbooks. It's a move to try to drive away this piece here, and white just played queen takes f6. G takes, bishop here, king g8, and beautiful setup. Knight takes f6, mate. Okay, so that's just an extreme example of what happens, with the, not paying attention when it comes, to trying to just trade off everything. Another short one from Bogo-Yubov with the white pieces and a player named Hosong from 1939. Okay, so we have some strange queen's pawn opening going on here. Just what we would call today is just getting a position. Now knight takes e5. Knight takes e5. D takes e5 from Bogo-Yubov. Knight takes e4. And now knight g3. Knight c5. Castles. Queen d7 and knight f5. And here, black decided to go after the bishop here, right? Knight takes d3, expecting, of course, this queen takes d3. But, there's some features in the position that are, that you don't want in the position if you're black. And one of them is this unprotected queen right here. So immediately, Bogo-Yubov spots the idea and just plays queen g4. Threatening mate, and a discovered attack on the queen. That was it. Black just resigned.